on them, or maybe if you've already dropped them, put an emoji in the chat or a comment in there. I want to see kind of where we're at with goals. So I'll tell you, I've got some goals. I've got 3 or 4 goals that I'm working on this year, and we'll go through those as kind of as examples as we go through the conversation. Let's see, we've got SoCal. A few more people jumped on. Danica's on here. Hey, Danica. Let's see. Let's go through to the first slide. Here's the question. What is it that really stops you from reaching your goals? I've got a list on the next slide, but let's talk about some of the things that we commonly see. So put them in the chat if you've got them, but really some of the things that I see most often are just kind of lack of motivation. You kind of forget about it. You may make it through a few months working on your goal, and then you miss a few days here and there, and then you just kind of give up, kind of quit. That's pretty common. Another one I see is sometimes people really just like change their plan. Halfway through the year something changes. That happened to me last year. Circumstances changed. I had this big goal to do a big mountain run, and we moved. And not just moving, but we moved out of the area, so I couldn't do that same mountain run, couldn't train the way I wanted to, so circumstances changed. Let's see, too big of a goal or too many goals. Yeah, that's a very common one. Sometimes we just want to accomplish everything all at once, and we bite off more than we can chew. Too many targets, undefined goals, emotional, mental wellness. Yeah, sometimes we just get burned out with life, and we just want to curl up in a ball and not do anything. And that happens. Let's see. I decided to take 30 days at a time this year to prevent overwhelm. Awesome idea. Competitive edge. Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that too, how that can play a role, just chunking things out. Obligations to job or work. Yeah, sometimes we have unforeseen priorities that come into play. I've got 4 kids, and sometimes, most of the time, you can't predict when they're going to need a lot of help or something, and that always happens. So we'll talk to you about that tonight, how sometimes maybe we can prepare for those unforeseeables. Laziness, yes, definitely. I would say lack of motivation is a big one we talked about. All right, let's jump into my list. This is a list I put together. It covers most of the topics. I'm sure there are others, but here's my list. Unclear actions. You have to have really actionable goals. If you don't know what to do, you're not going to do it. And this is just a high-level overview, so we'll get into the remedies for all of these as we go, but here are the problems. Unrealistic goals. Sometimes, like was mentioned in the comments, we bite off more than we can chew. Too many goals. Unmotivated. Procrastination, perfectionism. Sometimes we have high motivation, we really want to do something, we just think we'll do it later. And later never really comes, and then it's too late and we can't tackle it all at once. Or we try to and we do a subpar job. Negative self-talk, those mental, emotional blocks that can get in our way. We tell ourselves, I'm no good, I'm a failure, I'm never going to get this, and we give up. No scheduled time. Sometimes if we don't set aside specific time, it never happens because we're so busy. Lack of support. If you set a goal and your spouse or your kids or others in your life don't know about it, don't know how to support you, don't know they need to support you, how are they going to support you? That's a big one. Accountability. Sometimes we just need someone to give us a good kick in the butt and get us going. Changing circumstances, talked about that one. Competing priorities, limited resources. I'm sure there are more. Let's see here. Typo. Somebody said typo. Sorry if there's a typo. Yeah. All right, so let's go into what this can look like. A lot of times when we set up our goals, we just look at the summit of this pyramid here. We look at the daily plan, weekly, monthly plan, sometimes that annual plan, and we fail to look at all the rest of the stuff on this pyramid. And right now, this is kind of a relevant topic, but you see this slope of snow. There's a high avalanche risk in the backcountry in a lot of places right now. And the reason being that there's a weak layer underneath this huge dump of snow that we just got. We just got 60 inches in the past few days in my mountains behind me, and there's a big avalanche risk. All of those 60 inches are laying on top of a weak layer. And just like this slope here, if we try to stack these daily, weekly, monthly plans on an unsupported foundation, it's going to fall apart pretty easily. So that's what we're going to really talk about tonight. How do we build this solid pyramid that's going to support our actions every day? All right, let's see. Just looking at my notes, make sure I don't miss anything on this slide. Yeah, so like in this pyramid, you can see each layer is going to build on the next. Starts really foundationally with core personal values. And then we build purpose, and we get this big vision of like how our purpose is going to accomplish all these things. And then we build the plan out from there step by step. We're going to go through each one of these layers, and that's going to be a big part of our conversation tonight, plus a bunch of other stuff towards the end. But keep this framework in mind as we go. We've got to keep this built solidly on this foundation, and I'll try to explain why as we go. So yeah, let's go to the core personal values to start. So if you don't have everybody has core personal values. I'll start by saying that everybody operates with values. We have a whole bunch of them, but we usually have a very narrow group of values that are top priority values. Those are the core personal values I'm talking about. And they help us make our decisions. They give clarity to what we do every day. Some of us have defined those core personal values. We've taken the time, done the work to figure out what they are, write them down, give definitions to them. If you haven't, that's okay. Just know they're operating in the background in your life. They're there, and you can leverage them, but you have to identify them first, and you have to get them on paper. And there's lots of stuff on the internet. You can go search for it and find ways to do that. Or if you want, you can reach out to me. I've got in the workbook I have with when I bring clients on, there's a lot of helps, and I'll work you through that process step by step until we get it really clear. But those are really important because they help us with making decisions. So in the morning when you wake up and you're thinking about, what am I going to do today? I don't feel very motivated to get out of bed and do my goals, work on my goals. Maybe you're training for a marathon. It's raining, it's cold, I don't want to get up and go. These values are going to come into play, and they're going to help you make decisions. And if you consciously know what they are, it's going to help you say, you know what? I really value my physical health, or I really value determination or stick-to-itiveness. And you're going to say, and so if I'm living true to my values today, I'm going to get up and I'm going to do the work. And that's the foundation that we're going to start with, is these values. Because if you build on something else that's not your core value, there's no foundation there. You can't build on someone else's value. If there's a current trend going around the world, like let's say the trend to, do an ultra marathon, and you really don't care about doing ultra marathons. You're just doing it because your buddy asked you to, your wife is doing one, you think it'll be cool. There's no motivation there. You can work really hard and put in a lot of effort, but at the end of the day, the motivation is external to you. It's not internal. And so you have to start with these and get really clear on them. Let's see, we've got a couple comments I'll go to. Sorry, man. Let's see. Someone isn't motivated. Their why isn't strong enough. Yeah, exactly right. Competitive edge. We'll get to that on the next slide with purpose. So foundation leads to core values lead to purpose. And I like to say that core values, they're kind of like the not the why, but they're the reason behind it. They're the, what's the word? Sorry, let me find my notes here. If they're the what you do, then the purpose is why you do it. Okay, so let's go to that right now. Define your purpose based on your values. So you take your values and you're going to expand from there. Why do you care about what you care about? Why do you care about, for me, my values are growth and unity. So why do I care about them? What does that matter at the end of the day? And from that, you're going to be able to come up with a purpose statement. And there are going to be different variations of your purpose statement depending on what you're working on. So each goal may have a separate iteration of what that purpose is, but you need to have a purpose. It provides clarity, it provides motivation, and that's your why. That's like was said in the comments. If your why isn't clear, then it's really hard to be motivated by it. You've got to have it written down and really clear. And again, this is something that I really focus on a lot. A lot of my posts lately have been on this because it's foundational to all the other work we do. You've got to be clear on this. This leads to your vision, which is the next piece. So after you've figured out your core values, then you're going to go into this state of looking at the end of life perspective. And this is like, imagine your 90th birthday, right? Sitting around with all your grandkids, all your kids, any of your buddies that are still alive, and you're just kind of reflecting on your life. Not necessarily in an egotistical way. You're not thinking, wow, I'm so cool. Look at all the things I did. But kind of in a reflective state, saying, wow, I did a lot of really awesome things in life. And envision yourself in that moment for this. And this may seem like a stretch. I'm just setting goals, right, Chris? Well, this is going to help build that foundation, right? You've got to go to this state because we're going to work backward from there to make sure these are all aligned. If you want something bad enough that you're going to put your life effort into it, then you'll be able to put a year's effort into it, or a week, or a day. But if it really doesn't matter in the long run, at the end of your life, 90 years old, if you don't really care that you're able to learn to speak Swahili, then why do you care to work on it now? So this helps us put us in that state of mind. How does what you did in your life impact others? How do you show up at the end of everything you've done with meaning and significance? Not that you need a statue or anything, right? This is not about you. It's about other people. It's about how you contributed and how you gave back. So, and we'll get to a little bit more of the science behind this later, but the science shows that happiness, fulfillment, joy, all those things do not come from checking boxes, from accomplishing goals. They come from how we contribute to other people and to the world. And that's what these goals are really focused on. If you have that purpose, you'll tie it back to, how does this give to the world and other people, my family, my future posterity. And those goals will become more clear and relevant. And you'll be able to discard the junk goals that really are just kind of for show or for trendiness or any of those things that really in the long run aren't fulfilling, aren't meaningful. So how do you do this? Well, I like to start at that end of life and really draw out, get really visual. You can even write this out as like a story or something. End of life vision, and then take it back a step. You can start whatever increments make sense to you. I've got end of life 10 years and 1 year. Maybe it's 20 years, maybe it's 5 years, maybe your 1 year is actually a quarter or a month or whatever increment makes sense for your state in life, use it. But for me, let's just say 10 years. 10 years from now, I will be 50, okay? I'm 40 right now, 50 years old. All my kids will be adults. Who knows if they'll be out of the house or not, but they'll all be of adult age. I might have grandkids by then, who knows? My oldest will be 28, so possibilities there. yeah, I don't know. I could go through a lot of things there, but you're going to paint a picture of what life looks like, and you want to make it like draw the ideal state, right? So 10 years from now, what do I hope for? Well, I hope all my kids are independent, well-functioning, contributing members of society. I hope that I am healthy and well enough to enjoy life with my wife and all the time that we will have to be able to spend continuing our careers and adventuring together, all the fun things we like to do. So I'm painting this mental picture, right? And now I'm going to take it back even closer to 1 year and say, okay, if that's my 10-year vision and that's my end of life vision, then what needs to happen in the next year to get closer to that ideal? And so I'm going to start to paint that picture. Let's go through that. So with annual, consistency over intensity. Yeah, I like it. That's an important part of this that we'll get to as well. So the annual vision, when you get to this part, this is where the kind of that dreamy state of future happenings gets turned into real concrete things. And I know some of you are probably thinking, how am I going to paint a picture of this a year from now or 10 years from now? We can't predict the future. We don't know what's going to happen. You don't have to get really specific. You heard my examples of like, I hope my kids are good contributing members of society. I'm not saying I hope every one of my kids is married and lives in their own house and blah, blah, blah. I can't control all that. I can't predict all that. But I'm painting a general picture of an ideal state. But at this point, when we get to the 1 year, I'm going to start to get more concrete and specific. And I still got this ideal vision. A year from now, I hope, let's say, just for example's sake, I hope that I can ski a whole day, right, without stopping. That's a good goal. I get tired sometimes when I'm have to climb up 5,000-6,000 feet of vert and ski back down. I'm like, man, I'm tired. I'm done. Be a great goal for me to be able to go all day, up and down. Maybe do 10,000-15,000 feet of vert. Let's see. Maybe another example. Let's say I want to start a business. At the end of this year, let's say I want to have $120,000 of capital saved up and donated, or however I'm going to get it. So I can paint that as a concrete picture. From the annual intention of let's start a business, now I'm starting to form some more concrete concepts and ideas. Make sure this is all still aligned with your purpose and your values. It's easy at this point to get off track. You're going to slip back into that mindset of tomorrow and today, thinking of like, well, what matters to me right now, instead of that lifelong vision. So make sure you focus on the current state, but with that end vision in mind, purpose and values aligned. Okay. Let's see. Hey, Brent, welcome. All right. So now with this vision you've created of 1 year out, this is kind of how I look at it. You've got this vision and there's lots of elements going on in this vision. So maybe you've got like some stuff about staying healthy. Maybe you've got some stuff about your finances. Maybe you've got some stuff in there about, like for me, I've got quite a few things in there I'd like to do adventure-wise, different trips and activities I want to be able to do. My wife and I are learning how to scuba dive right now, so that's one of ours this year. You're going to have this picture, and out of that picture, you're going to extract some specific goals. You're not going to say, let's make the entire picture a reality, because as we talked about in the beginning, that will quickly lead to overwhelm and lack of focus. You've got to pick just a few select goals, right? So, and I'd like to keep them balanced. Not necessarily, and when I talk about balanced, I mean like, let's pick one in a physical realm. Let's pick one in maybe like an emotional, mental health, spiritual facet of your life, relationships. And you don't have to cover all the bases. Sometimes people are like, pick a goal in all 5 of these categories. And the reason is, to help you stay balanced. I like to think of it more in terms of you don't want to compete with yourself, right? So if something's really important to you, let's say I want to this year learn to use the marathon example again. I want to run an ultra marathon. Well, I'm not also going to be able to set a goal to become an Olympic figure skater. Physically, I don't think most people could handle those sorts of drastic different activities, especially since I've never been figure skating. So in order to not compete with yourself, you're going to pick a physical goal that makes sense, the most sense with your ideal vision, and then you're going to pick some other goals. And I would say it depends on the scope and size of these things, but 2, 3, 4, that's probably the ideal number. I wouldn't typically go above that unless they're not huge. And, sometimes you can knock a goal out in a few months, or it's not going to take very much of your time. If it's like, I want to work on my Spanish for 15 minutes a day, that's easy. You can do that laying in bed at night, and you can stack a bunch of other stuff on that. But you need to know yourself and find those balance points. Okay. All right. So now we're going to move into a little bit more of like concrete. How do you actually make these goals happen? Because so far we're just painting this visual picture, which is actually really important. You've got to be able to visualize what success looks like at the end of the day, and that's why these like annual intention vision exercises really matter, right? Okay, so let's go to the next here. You probably all heard of SMART goals, and before you tune out and say, I don't want to hear about SMART goals again, my SMART goals are different. You'll look at this and you'll notice that it is not the traditional, whoever invented it, I'm not even sure, SMART goal. So let's go through it. S, normally that is specific. In the typical traditional model, S stands for specific, and specific is good, specific's fine. But I find that when you follow this model of going down from values and purpose, then, specific, it's really not as important as people make it sound. I'll tell you I don't know if it's a secret, but it's something I learned doing research into this topic. This SMART model blew up because corporate America could leverage it to measure employees' performance. And then at the end of the year, give you a performance review and say, hey, did you meet your goals? Yes, it's specific and measurable and all these things. And that's why. But the science doesn't really support that it has to be specific in terms of like spelling out exactly how many of these widgets you're going to produce in the year. What does matter is that you're clear on the vision. And that you could say that's being specific, but you don't have to have like a set number of whatever. You can say, I'm going to just progress in this area to a point where I feel comfortable or confident. Take an example of like self-confidence. How do you set a goal around self-confidence? Well, a lot of corporate roles would say, no, that doesn't count as a goal because it's not measurable. And there's probably a way to measure that. But if you really want to just look at the core of self-confidence, then you're not going to be able to measure that very well unless you hook yourself up to like a stress test and walk into a room full of people and measure your stress response, or, things like that. Unrealistic. Back to significant. So instead of specific, let's look at significant. Significant meaning, how far does this move the needle towards my end of life vision, right? How much impact is this goal going to have on my ability to impact the world for good? There's probably other ways to put that, but really you want to get super specific about it, or specific about why it's significant to you, okay? Let's go to motivating. Typically the M is for measurable, talked about that a little bit, but the motivating piece, that goes back to the vision, or the vision and the purpose and the values. If you get it right, this goal will be motivating. You will feel excited about it. If it's not motivating, maybe you need to go back to that list, that end of year vision, and pick something that may be more motivating. And motivating, sometimes we get confused here. I don't want to confuse this one with being scared. Being scared is okay. You may be terrified to take on a goal. I've known people, they're terrified to take on the goal of quitting an addiction, going sober, things like that. That can be scary. But you need to look at your reasoning behind it and decide, am I really motivated to do this? Doesn't mean that you're like, yes, let's go. But you need to have that feeling of like, no, I really need to do this for my family, for myself. I'm motivated to make the change. It's going to suck, but we're going to do it, right? So don't confuse excitement motivation with that kind of scared motivation. All right. The A typically stands for achievable. In my model, it's for aligned. Pretty obvious. I've talked about that the whole time. It needs to be aligned with everything that we've talked about to be built on that solid foundation. Achievable, that'll go into the R. And the R for me is responsible. Typically that's realistic, okay? I like setting a responsible goal. And I think a responsible goal inherently is realistic and it's also achievable. Responsible, in my mind, looks at the broader world. A lot of goals people set can be really selfish. They can take advantage of family members. They can take advantage of coworkers. They can take advantage of friends. And that may be okay. I think of a guy that I know. He had kids at home, wife at home, and set a goal to go climb Mount Everest. And he ended up dying in the process. And I don't want to judge that because I don't know the conversations and the situation with his wife and his family. But if I know my wife and my family, if I were to set that goal to go climb Mount Everest, one, it's super expensive and I'm taking away from opportunities they may have. But two, there's a big risk involved with something like that. And if I didn't come home, that would be very irresponsible of me towards my family and my wife. So responsible means you need to weigh the cost to everybody else, not just your family, but society at large. And look at, is it really worth the cost, right? Is it responsible? And that may very well be, gotta slow down. Very well may be that guy had talked to his wife and family and said, I don't know if this is the best thing to do. What do you think? And they may have all supported him and said, yeah, well, we want you to do this. In that case, that could be responsible. But we've got to take those steps and consciously ask, how is this impacting us? Yeah, the comment says, knowing the decisions we make have ripple effects to all. That's a big part of the responsible. Okay. And the achievable part that I said fits in there. Like, really, it's just, am I going to be able to do everything else I need to do, have a balanced life, be able to show up as the best version of myself in all aspects of my life if I take this on, right? So, yeah, it's achievable. I can still maintain balance. There's another comment. I think people set goals with only themselves in mind at times, for sure. Like I said, goals can be really selfish. And with this model, the goal is to create goals that are impactful more than just achievements, right? Merit badges we can wear around and say, look how cool I am, I did this thing. It's goals that matter, goals that can make a difference. And those are the goals that really are motivating and purposeful. Anyway, so, and time-based, the typical one says time-bound, and this is slightly different. Time-bound is like, let's put an end date on this sucker. This thing is going to be done by November 12th at 12:01 p.m. And that's okay. You can certainly do that with some goals, but raise your hand or drop a heart in the chat or something if you've ever set a goal with a date and had to push the date. I have. And how does that feel? That really doesn't feel good, especially at work when you're like, oh, this is part of my accountability to my boss. It's going to go on my performance review. When you have to push those dates for whatever reason, it sucks. And yeah, there's a thumb. So I say time-based. It's okay to set a stamp on these, but they've got to recognize that these are flexible. And the stamp really for time-based is like, I want to finish this thing at some point. And a good goal is the end of November. But I know very well that things are going to come up. And even if they do, I'm not going to quit. I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to feel guilty. I'm not going to feel shame. I'm just going to keep working at it. And I'll flex. And that's life. That's real life. If we did anything else, we'd probably have to make some significant sacrifices elsewhere. Yeah, especially as a dad, yes, that's true. You know, as a parent, priorities are our kids, our careers, those things that we have to do to support our families, and showing up for them in the moment. When kid comes home from school, sad, upset, they need your time, they need your attention and your love. Sometimes you just got to bag the run or whatever you're doing and spend time with people that matter. Because at the end of the day, why are you doing these goals anyway? It doesn't matter if you're an ultra runner extraordinaire if your kids don't even know who you are. Okay, enough of that. Let's go to the next part here. Okay, so here we're going to get a little more into the nuts and bolts. Stay with me because this can get confusing. And I'll just say the next, I think, 2 or 3 slides, this is where I see most people drop the ball. We can put in so much time and effort trying to accomplish our goals. People trying to start a business, right? How much time are they going to put in every week? If it's a side hustle, maybe it's 20 hours a week on top of their regular job. If it's like their full-time gig, maybe they're doing like 60, 80 hours a week trying to build this thing out. It's a lot of investment of time. I can guarantee you, if you take a few hours, maybe, 4 or 5 hours over the course of a week or 2 weeks even, up front to plan these goals out effectively with these next steps, the rest of it is a lot easier. But people, for whatever reason, they fail to do this and they just jump ahead. So define the gaps. What I talk about in this is what stands between you and accomplishing your goals. So think about each goal individually. So back to our marathon example, let's say I'm going to train for and run a marathon in September. It's a fall marathon. I've got 8 months to figure this thing out. What do I need to do to be ready for it? So there's going to be several gaps and you're going to look at each facet. So there's going to be, I've got to register for the race. I've got to buy the equipment. I've got to build the training. I've got to find time to do this. I've got to develop the mental fortitude and discipline. You're going to look at all these different facets and write out all these gaps. And you're going to get very specific and clear on these gaps because the process is identifying what actions need to be taken to close the gap. Okay? So this isn't some ethereal chasing the finish line. It's like one step at a time we're working towards a goal. And defining the gaps is building the foundation for the next piece, which is, chunking it out. And this piece, chunking it out, is really where we can break down the overwhelm. Have any of you ever set a goal and felt like, wow, it's really overwhelming to think about how am I going to do this? You can't quite process how to get from here to there. This is the step that's going to help. Once you've got those gaps defined, you're going to look at each one individually. So the marathon, let's say it's training. I've got to train I can go buy a marathon training plan that gives me 8 months training off the internet. That's fine and easy. Plug it in. What's going to happen with that is it's going to give me like, you need to go on run for X number of miles each week, or maybe it's in hours. So you need to go on 3 runs this week, a 5 mile, a 7 mile, and a 8 mile. That's the sort of chunking you have to do with your goals. We're going to break it down, and you can break it down into whatever increment makes sense. I like to start at a high level. So if this is a year-long goal, start at a month or maybe a quarter. Break it down into bite-sized digestible chunks. So let's say with the marathon, the first piece I'm going to say is phase 1, right? This phase 1, I'm just going to block it out and say, all right, for phase 1, I'm going to run for X number of miles each week, and just write in the number of miles. If it's a business, I'm starting a business, maybe the chunk is, again, that 120,000 I need in capital to start this thing. $10,000 a month. There's a chunk. Whatever is a logical chunk to you that you can break down into smaller and smaller bits, that's what you have to do. And then once you get it into like a month, you're going to break it down into a week and then a day. And we'll go into that piece next. So every chunk gets broken down. You're going to do, like I said, many of you are probably thinking, oh, that's really hard. This is the step that makes the difference right here. You can get everything else aligned. And if you fail to do this, your goals are going to struggle. Okay? So break everything down into actionable steps, and then you're going to schedule it. So put it on a calendar. With me, we use a Google shared calendar for our family, and everybody has their own color, and everybody gets slotted in so we can see everybody's stuff, and we can be accountable to each other, but also respectful of each other's stuff, right? So my wife knows right now I'm doing this webinar, and so she's made herself available to take care of other things. It's on the calendar, and you have to get it on the calendar for yourself, but also for everybody else. And if it's on the calendar, it's a lot harder to bump. When somebody calls and says, hey, do you want to go out tonight? Oh, you know what? I'd love to. I've got this thing on the calendar. Let's do it tomorrow. Or you may be able to say, you know what? I'm going to go do this thing first, and then I'll meet you there. Or, whatever you need to do, but make it happen. And I try to plan out like a calendar at one month at a time, roughly. So I'll get my bigger chunks and I'll say, okay, these are the tasks for the quarter. These are the tasks for the month. And then I've got a list kind of like, these are the primary priority tasks that I'd like to get done this month. And then each week I'm going to take whatever tasks I need to and slot them out in my calendar for the week. This makes it not as overwhelming. So you don't have to do the whole year all at once. You're just taking one chunk at a time and digesting it. And so each week I'm going to look at it and say, I've got a free night Tuesday. I'm going to go on a good run Tuesday night. And I'm not training for a marathon, by the way, but it's an easy example. On Thursday morning, I've got some free time. I can work on writing my book. On Saturday afternoon, there's a slot. I'm going to put this other chunk of family activity time in there. So you're just kind of picking and choosing. And the reason you can do this is because you've got this calendar. You can be flexible. And then, so let's say Saturday, I've got this slotted in Saturday afternoon, time with my family. That's actually one of my goals. But something comes up. Let's say I've got to go take the car into the shop. It broke down, because things are going to come up, right? Well, I'm going to take that Saturday chunk and just move it to the next available piece. And even if that means a week, 2 weeks later, I'm just moving my actions down the road a little bit. And that can be hard, but you have to recognize that the whole point of this is to help you accomplish your goals. And if you do that, you'll stay on track because you know what action comes next. So this is being realistic and flexible. And this is where a lot of things fall apart. Yeah. So keep that in mind. You don't have to stick to the schedule once you put it in place. Just move things out. It's okay. Don't feel bad about it. Okay, here's a question. What if you feel like you have to keep bumping your calendar? When do you hold firm on a goal or choose to be flexible and move to another time? Yeah, I mean, you obviously can't just keep bumping and bumping and bumping. If you're doing that, it may be a good sign you're not motivated and you need to go back and revisit your purpose behind the goal. Sometimes the appropriate response is to bag the goal and say, you know what? I feel like things have changed, and that's okay. Let's set a new goal. Let's throw this one aside or save it for later. The other piece is talking to like those that we're conflicting with, saying, you know, my friends, they keep calling me and this conflicts with my schedule, my goals. What's really my priority? Is it hanging out with my friends or is it accomplishing my goal? And talking to them and saying, you know what? I really want to hang out with you guys. I'm training for a marathon. Do you guys want to come with me? You know, make things like that happen. You can also do some things a little more drastically. You can get hard-nosed about things and say, you know what? I'm way behind on my goals. I'm going to take a little bit of time for me this week. Talk to your family or whoever it is. Say, I'm going to bust out 4 or 5 actions. Can I just have some time to do that tonight? I'm just going to step out away from some of these commitments and just get some stuff done. But you have to be responsible and respectful again. Let's look at the comments here. Okay, yeah, that means we haven't shared our why with our loved ones too. Yeah, like I'm talking about. You have to work with the people that are conflicting with you. And maybe it's your boss. You can't really say, hey boss, I'm training for a marathon. I can't stay late today. In that case, if there's like a big conflict like that, that can be challenging. You may need to revisit the feasibility of that goal. And in the big picture, you may need to revisit the career and the job and the boss you're working for. Yeah, that's another story. But we'll call that a conversation there. If you have more questions about this, we can go into it later, because I know this is kind of where the rubber meets the road when our goals happen. The bottom line is be very specific about your actions, put them on the calendar, and then be realistic and flexible about executing. Okay. When you get these things planned, go do them. Just go do it. You know, get up in the morning. Don't let obstacles get in your way. We're going to talk about obstacles in a minute. Just go after it. Make it happen. Don't make excuses for yourself. Stay committed to it. Stay focused. And there are lots of mental tricks or tools that you can use to stay focused on getting things done. Again, if you start with the right motivation, with the right purpose, it's a lot easier to wake up at 4 a.m. and go out into a cold, snowy blizzard and do work, right? Okay. But obviously things happen, and most of the things happen right here in between our ears. We have to learn how to manage our thoughts. Always you're going to have thoughts going through your head about your goals, subconsciously most of the time, but a lot of times this is negative talk. I'm not good enough. I shouldn't have set this goal. This is too hard. I'm not committed. I'm too lazy for this. I don't feel like doing this. I'd rather be doing something else. That is 100% natural. And if you're not experiencing that, it's probably because your goal isn't challenging enough. The science shows that you have to set a goal that pushes you outside of your comfort zone for it to be effective at one, changing who you are, but also motivating you to do it. If it's too easy, it's not really doing anything. You're not changing. If it's too hard, it's going to be overwhelming. It's a lot easier to err on the side of too easy than too hard, though. So you've got to set the right difficulty of goal, the right challenge that's going to challenge you. And you know you're being challenged when your brain tells you to stop, right? Just like anything else, when you push yourself, when you do something new, your brain says, no, you don't need to do that. Don't wake up so early. Don't go exercise. That's not fun. We're not used to that. That's called growth, right? That's called getting outside your comfort zone. And that's what we're trying to accomplish here. So bottom line is suck it up, buttercup. But there's some specific tools you can use as well, because you can't be mean to yourself in the process. If you put yourself down and beat yourself up, it's not going to work. You need to be able to do it in a positive way. You need to accept detours towards your vision and really don't quit. Don't give up because of shame or guilt or any of these other feelings. Just keep going. If you need help managing your thoughts, that's a separate topic as well that we'll cover in a future webinar. But there's specific tools and skills you can use to help guide the way we're approaching these sorts of things. Yeah, need to be your biggest fan, not critic. Exactly. This is positive. Build yourself up towards the goal. And, okay, so let's say everything goes well. You accomplish the goal. It's time to celebrate. Oftentimes we don't celebrate the way we could. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit. First of all, you have to plan your celebration. Just like you plan the work, part of that work is your celebration. Who are you going to celebrate with? Where are you going to go? What are you going to do? This can be part of your motivation. However, be warned that just one big celebration at the end may motivate you towards the goal, but you can also get discouraged along the way. So I like to set up celebration waypoints throughout the process. And the science also shows that when you do this, you can build motivation throughout, but if you do it too much, you can also limit your motivation to continue. So you have to do this judiciously. I heard a conversation about this once where they said, plan to celebrate at every waypoint, but when you get there, flip a coin. Heads, we celebrate, tails, we don't. That way it's kind of a surprise, and it helps your dopaminergic process, which is your motivation process, continue. So what you want to do is, all right, so let's say I completed all my tasks for phase 1. All right, let's celebrate. Flip a coin. Oh, we don't get to celebrate, actually. That's okay. Let's keep going. That seems odd, but the neuroscience supports that approach. So we're going to celebrate at the end. We're going to celebrate waypoints, but we also have to beware of what we call the arrival fallacy. And if you haven't heard of that, basically that if you've ever completed a big goal, let's say you graduated from college, big goal, the joy lasts for about this long before we're back to a normal state of happiness and contentment. Totally supported by science. Happiness goes up when we hit a goal, and then it comes right back down. We often fall into this trap of thinking, I'll be happy when, or won't it be awesome when, ... when we complete these things. The truth is, that's not how our brains work. In fact, with the arrival fallacy, oftentimes we end up worse off than when we started if we're out of balance, because we're going to chase this goal with dogged determination at the cost of whoever and whatever else is in the way. And then when we get to the goal, we're left kind of empty, right? Oh, well, finished my marathon, but I don't even know who my wife or my kids are anymore because I spent all my time training. That's part of the arrival fallacy. You have to be aware that you're not going to be content when you finish the goal, especially if it's not aligned. But if it's purpose aligned and fulfilling towards your ultimate calling and purpose in life, then it's going to be a lot more fulfilling and move you towards that end of life vision. So just a caution on celebrating. Let's see, after this, let's see what we're going to get into. You will have built this awesome foundation, solid foundation to stack your goals on. You can climb these mountains. You've got to start with the basics, though. You've got to start with your values and your purpose, and then paint this vision. If you don't, you're really not going to find the success that you want or you could. So I've got a few statistics here. I looked this up, and let me find this. Did you know that like 3% of people have written goals, and 92% of people who set New Year's goals never achieve them? And I can tell you that one of the main reasons why is because they aren't following a structured process like this. They aren't following a process that aligns them with really what they want at the end of the day and at the end of their lives. Okay. So that's really the end of the presentation. There's a lot more detail we could go into with goals. Okay, question here. Can you define arrival fallacy again? Yeah, let's go. So arrival fallacy is this trap we fall into in our thinking process that says, I will be happy when. Fill in the blank with whatever you want. So let's say I will be happy when I finish that marathon. Wow, won't it feel great? I'm going to be so awesome. So much like fitness, dedication, commitment. But then when you finish the marathon, you're going to feel good. You're going to feel good for a few days, right? That happens. And that's the dopamine high. That's the adrenaline that's going to pump us up and make us feel like, yeah, I'm awesome. But then a few days later, a week later, come back to reality and you're like, I don't feel any better, right? Sure, I'm fit. I'm a little tired. I'm a lot more capable of running long distances, but you're not going to feel fulfilled. You're not going to feel that happiness you thought you would. It's a trap that we fall into. And then what you're going to do is you're going to set another goal. Oh, I got to go run 2 marathons next. I'm going to go run a 50 mile or 100 kilometer, whatever it is. You're going to just keep trying to ratchet that up to chase that dopamine high. And you have to recognize what's going on in your mind and in your body to kind of catch that response. So the arrival fallacy is a trap, and you got to watch out for it in the goal setting process. It's motivating, and that's good. You can motivate yourself by saying, yes, when I get that, it's going to feel great. But you also have to temper it by saying, hold your horses. This is just a process. And I guess this is an important piece I failed to add earlier, but so much of the success and the joy and the fulfillment we get out of goal setting, and at the end of the day, the only really thing that matters in goal setting is the person that we become through the process. It's doing the work, right? If I were to set a goal to plant a flag on top of Annapurna, big mountain, I could take a helicopter up there and stick a flag in there and fly back down. And it would be absolutely not fulfilling at all because I didn't do any work. It's the work that we put in to build that, to build the life that we want that really matters. And so when you look at it that way, recognizing that it's okay to stretch these out, it's okay to flex on your dates and things like that, because what really matters isn't that you check the box and say, I ran across the finish line. It's that you put in the work and that you got up at 4 a.m. day after day in the heat, in the cold, that you kept going and finished what you started. That's what changes who you are. It's not actually crossing the finish line that matters. So that's an important piece of this. Let's see, there's some notes here. Using these goals as bricks to your ultimate legacy brick house. Yeah, every goal, every step you take towards each goal is creating in you the person that you want to be. And you know who is going to pay attention to that at the end of the day? For me, it's my kids. They're watching me. They see everything I do. They see when I get up early. They see when I sleep in. And I know that they're learning from me without even having to talk about these things. They're watching it. That's what matters in these cases. Let's see. Margaret says, I trained and ran my 3rd marathon last fall, but a few weeks later, I challenged myself to use a handheld drill to remove my old mailbox and install a new one. Learning how to use power tools. Yeah, awesome. That's kind of the process that we go through. We're always going to be looking for something new. We're driven by novelty. So you can't just run a marathon year after year after year and still get the same level of growth. You have to keep changing it, back to that arrival fallacy. Any other questions that people have in the chat? We've got maybe a few more minutes here, coming up to the top of the hour. If not right now, please feel free to reach out. I'm gonna just go to my last slide. Obviously this is on Instagram, so you all know how to find me on Instagram, but here's my email address if you want to reach out via email. Feel free to DM me. I'm happy to go deeper on any of these subjects. I'd love to chat with any of you about it. Also, if you want to learn more about this goal setting process, I've got the workbook like I mentioned. I can send you parts of it. I give the whole thing. It's like 100 pages that goes through how to build a legacy from pretty much every aspect of your life, step by step, and we'll talk through it. That's part of the coaching program. But yeah, DM me if you want to learn more about this and go deeper. Anyway, I greatly appreciate everybody jumping on tonight. Everybody's participation was awesome. Thank you so much for being here, and I will post the replay sometime in the future. It'll probably be 2 weeks from now, I think. I've got all my Instagram posts are scheduled out for a couple weeks. But I'll get a copy of it up for sure. And maybe it's right now. I don't know. I think if I end this thing, it'll probably make me post it. We'll see. Anyway, thank you all. Have a great night.